Hey guys, welcome back to the Ms.Behaven Farms. Today I am planting garlic, and I just thought I would show you guys a quick video on how I do this. As a reminder, I live in zone 8B, just outside of Charleston, South Carolina. We have very mild winters and very erratic temperatures. So for instance, yesterday it was about 40 degrees. Today it's like 70. So this information is great for people who live in the South, same zone as I, or same type of climate. I am planting two types of garlic today, Enchilium Red and Red Torch. This is seed I saved from last year. I had really good success last year with it. I had a whole 3 by 8 foot bed planted and got so much garlic. For us and where I live, the perfect planting time is somewhere between Halloween and Thanksgiving. I planted this garlic that I harvested from last year, November 11th. And I think I harvested it, gosh, I can't remember, maybe July. But just tons of giant bulbs, really successful. So I went with these two varieties because they're soft neck. Depending on where you live, you might need to do a soft neck or a hard neck. For us, our winters are just not cold enough, so we do soft neck. And it's, like I said, it's been really good for us. So what I did was I saved the biggest heads from last year as seed for this year. I stuck it in just some paper bags. I punched some holes in them and I stored them in my barn, which stays about 55 degrees year round. It's a refrigerated barn. So it was perfect temperature. I do have some that were just starting to sprout now, but if I had planted it probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, like was the perfect time, I probably wouldn't have had that issue. Either way, not a big deal. I'm gonna plant it anyway. So I broke up all those heads of garlic that I'd saved and I picked out the biggest cloves, which are the individual pieces that make one head of garlic. I made sure they weren't rotten. I made sure that they looked like they weren't soft, because sometimes they'll start to dehydrate and get soft. So these are nice, firm cloves that look very healthy still, and that's what I'm gonna plant this year. I did the math on how many seed cloves I'm gonna need per bed, and I'm planting very closely. I tend to try to fit more in my beds than is technically recommended. And what I have to do is I just have to make sure I fertilize it a little bit more often if I do that, because there's more plants per bed and it obviously sucks the nutrients out of the soil quicker. So what I'm choosing to do is do every 4 inches in rows that are 6 inches apart. It's probably about half of what is recommended, but like I said, this is what I did last year and it worked out really good, so I'm gonna keep doing it. To try to keep that as even as possible, all I did was I found this just scrap 2 by 2 and I marked on it where 6 inches is here and I marked on it where 4 inches is here. So I can easily put this down as a template, use my dibble, which is literally just use the dowel rod that I found. I also marked the inches on here. I'm planting it about 3 or 4 inches deep, and I just go around and I dibble down the line and then I move it down, and it makes it really quick and easy and very uniform, which I like. I will also say that I'm staggering these rows. So if I have 2 here, I'm putting one kind of where the gap is, the next row, so that I can squeeze even more in, because that dead space in the middle where the round bulb would be. Does that make sense? So I've already planted like all of this. Right here is the next row that I did. So I just measured 6 inches over. I laid my template down. I'll show you guys how I did this. And then my dowel, I will mention that I did kind of water this soil down because it was very dry, and as I was making holes, it was kind of filling back in. So I did water the surface down a little bit before I started doing this. But all you do is just where your lines are, stick it down in, like this is 3 inches. I'm going between 3 and 4 inches, and I'm just kind of wiggling it around and gently pulling it out so it doesn't all fall back in. And I just went all the way down the line, and I just did that. And once you get your rhythm down, it's very quick and easy. And so you get the point, right? I made my holes, and then I moved my template out of the way. I'm just using these little spacers that are 6 inches because I don't want to get another ruler, and I'm just putting them like this so I know where to put my next row. And the way I measured this and marked this was that this end was the 2 inch section and this end was the 4 inch section. So I can flip it back and forth and make that those staggered rows like I was talking about. That way I know if I flip it and rotate it, now instead of having 4 inches off this side, I'm 2 inches off this side and vice versa. The last row I did is 2 inches from the side of the bed. So when I flip it like this is where I start my 4 full inches, and I'll just do it like that. Again, it doesn't have to be like precise, but it's nice to kind of keep it even so that you can make sure you get as much as you can in your beds. So that's for the next row. But for this row, I'm just taking my seed garlic. Like I said, I already separated. You can see this one started to sprout already, which is fine. I just need to make sure I don't break off that tip if it already has that sprout. And all I gotta do is just shove it down to the bottom of the hole. When they haven't sprouted, they're a lot easier because you don't need to be as careful with the little sprout. Like for instance, this one, I can just take it and shove it down in there. Another thing is, freaking fire ants. You will want to make sure that when you're pointing, obviously when it's sprouted, it's really easy to tell which end goes up because you put the plant side up. But if it haven't sprouted yet, there's a flat side that was attached to the bottom where the root system was, and then there's a pointed tip. Always plant with the pointed tip up because that's where it's going to sprout. And I just go down, and that's all I do is just make sure I get them down to the bottom of the hole. After I have gone down my entire length of my bed, I'll go back in with some fertilizer, which is just some all-purpose garden tone, like a slow-release fertilizer, and I'll make furrows in between here and put a nice line of fertilizer so that when these bulbs, the root systems, start to grow inward, they'll have that food source as soon as they kind of need it. One other thing I will mention is that the way I mark what is what on things like this, where it's carrot seeds or garlic seeds or things that are buried and you do a dense planting, is I just use old mini blind pieces. This was like an old mini, when we moved in, we had mini blinds and we upgraded them, and I saved these because if you take off all the strings, these are the best plant markers. I know I've said this like 100 times already on this channel, but I cut them like this if I want to mark individual plants. But if I want to mark sections of my garden bed, like for instance, I'm planting this half and half this variety, half the other variety, I will mark on it with pencil. Okay, pencil stays put. Permanent marker does not. Permanent marker fades in the sun, but pencil will always be visible, like years later in the sun. I've been able to read these. So I'll mark this like this one's in Chilean red. I mark the date that I plant it. And I also mark it with arrows. So arrows are gonna go this way, pointing, indicating that this half of the bed is the in Chilean red. And then I'll just lay it down where I get to the end of my section, and I'll staple it in with these just 6-inch landscape staples. Super cheap, but it keeps it, and you just kind of do it like this. You do it like this. And boom, now this won't go anywhere, and it kind of marks where your planting has been. Very helpful, especially if you start to plant multiple varieties of carrots or beets or anything like that. Really great tip. All right, so then that's not gonna go there yet because I have to plant more, but I just wanted to show you. Again, I'll show you how I do this. I just have my all-purpose fertilizer here. And when I want to go back, I'll just take my hand, run it in a furrow like this. And while I'm doing that, it's kind of filling in the seed holes. And I want to do this before I fill in the seed holes because I obviously want to know where the rows are. If I fill in the holes first and then try to do the furrows, I would have no idea where those rows are. So it's kind of like 2 for 1. Just kind of make a little bit of a trench. And I'm going to say probably, 2 inches. You can even do this too. You can even kind of just flip it over. Maybe 2 inches. And then I'm just going to, pretty generous, just do a giant line of fertilizer. And then just sort of do one of these. Now I have both of those rows filled in. I've covered up that fertilizer. and that's good to go. After this, I'll go ahead and water it in really good, and then I run my drip irrigation line back down. After I've planted all these, I'll mulch pretty heavily, probably about 3 inches of just, I use wheat straw. I give it to my chickens, they pick through the seeds and I throw it over here. But if you don't have chickens, you can also just use the wheat straw and just, you're gonna have to pluck out probably the seeds that start to germinate. That's the only downside with that. Or a light colored mulch. You don't want anything in the south, you don't want anything too dark because it's gonna absorb that heat. And the key to growing garlic in the south is to try to keep it as cool as possible until we get to spring, because you don't wanna stimulate like a false spring throughout the winter. And it kind of just jacks up the garlic's natural cycle. So again, these are my tips. They worked last year. I wanted to show them to you. Not rocket science, but give it a try because this garlic has been so delicious. And this garden bed normally wouldn't have been used all winter long. And now I'm using it to grow garlic. So I will say it is a long-standing plant, meaning like you have to commit this garden bed or a bucket or a container or whatever you're going to grow it in pretty long term for that garlic, because it's going to take midwinter, mid-fall, all the way through till midsummer. So you're not going to be able to plant anything in that. But I really think it's worth it, and give it a shot, even if it's just a small little container or small bed in your garden. It's worth a shot. So, all right, hopefully it's helpful, and I'll talk to you guys later.